Here we go with the first lab in the following course, which is build a web application on Azure platform as a service offerings. The lab will be showing you on how you're going to create an Azure App Service with a plan for it, how you can deploy your web applications or APIs into it, and implement an integration between those by using the app configuration service. For this lab to be successfully completed, if you're using the sandbox environment, which is a cloud offering from Microsoft to do the demo, in that case, your virtual machines get pre-installed with all your necessary setup for doing the demos. In case, if you are using your own Azure subscriptions like free trial accounts, or if you're making use of an Azure PaaS to practice these demos, you may have to do some manual configurations of the SDKs and the libraries that are needed for the demo. As a part of the current lab, the first basic requirement would be to download the .NET 8, and this link you can find out. And here from this link, you can choose the type of device you're using, and say I'm using a Windows device, so I could preferably go for a Windows x64 version, download the following .NET 8 SDK and install it. Regarding installation, this is a very straightforward installation, so nothing complex. Just install it as you wish and the rest would work as you expect. Followed by this, you will also be using certain CLI commands with Azure, so it is necessary that you may have to install the Azure CLI from here. So the following would be the link. And here, if you see, depending on whether you're using a Windows, Mac or Linux device, you can choose the choice in here. So if I go with install Windows, then here the instruction option comes in where based on the bit of your operating system, say mine is a 64-bit OS, I will download the MSI installer from here. Choose this and you will get an SDK for installation, download and install it. And this will get the Microsoft Azure CLI installed in your laptops so that you can communicate with the Azure platform using CLI commands. Followed by this, in the entire course, you would be coming across plenty of labs. And for the same, you may require the following GitHub repository. If you are using the Learn on Demand, which is a sandbox environment for the demos, you will have instructions to get this code. And if in case you're using your personal devices and you are doing the demos in your laptops and you prefer to use your own free trial subscription or your Azure passes, you have to come to this one, the following GitHub repo. And there is an option called code. You can click on it. You can download the zip file or clone this repo, whichever is convenient to you. And in my case, I have did the same and I have cloned this repository to my local computer. And as you see now, I have did the cloning of the following AZ204 folder to my machine. And this one has all those components which we found in the GitHub. And whenever we need to do certain developments and deployments, we would make use of this facility. And these are certain prerequisites to be handled by us. And once these are in place, you can start moving forward with the demo. And here are our lab instructions. You can find these instructions in your sandbox environment as well. Similarly, you can also refer to the following link to find out these instructions. And when talking about sandbox, only if you have acquired it from the team, you can use it. If not, you may have to use your free trial accounts or Azure passes you may have to acquire from the team and get this job done. Now to talk about the labs, in this lab, you will learn a very good concept. So whatever these instructions and everything you see, these are related to the lab server, which is a sandbox environment for practicing the demo, which you will acquire or we will be given on request. Leaving that part, if you come down, the lab starts specifically from here, and that's your scenario which we are going to deal with. In this given lab, you will be learning about the following architecture. As you see the architecture, we will deploy an Azure App Service in here, and the Azure App Service that we are going to create can hold multiple apps which we discussed in the beginning. So we will have an app service plan called Manage It plan, and we will have a separate app called API app, which is called Image Store API to host an API. We will also provision Image Store Web to host a website in it. And at the end of the day, the thing is, we will have a storage account that will hold certain videos, pictures, and audios of an application. We will deploy an API into this Image Store API application, which will read the images available in the storage account. And similarly, we will integrate this API by using the app configurations from this image store web server. So the web server will call the API to read the pictures and display it in the website. So we will experience on how you can upload and download the pictures directly in the UI and display it in the website. And again, we are not focusing on developing any API or web application here. So we will make use of the GitHub repository that we have cloned in the current situation, which has all these components pre-written in it. So we will understand that to an extent, and we will directly deploy this code into this API as well as web server. And also to display the website with some pictures, our GitHub repository that we cloned does even have some sample pictures. We will make use of those sample pictures in here. Now, without wasting any more time, we are going to start with this procedure. That's the exercise number 1, to build your API using the Azure storage as well as all these together combined with web apps. So the first step in the game, we are provisioning this. That is a storage account that will be having a container called images. And furthermore, what is a container and everything you will learn in the upcoming discussions. So in this, you will be storing your images. To come back, this is my Azure portal, which you can access from portal.azure.com. You can use your personal mail IDs, or you can preferably use the personal email IDs so that you will have all the admin privileges here. And as I said, if you have the sandbox environment acquired from request, then you can use that sandbox environment. In that scenario, you will get a username and password for practicing the demos in the sandbox predefined in it. Whereas if you are making use of an option like an Azure free trial account, or you're getting an AzurePaaS and activating your account, in that scenario, you can go to portal.azure.com with whichever the account you have activated using that respective credentials. Now, in this Azure portal, we can start doing the process. As a part of the game, the first step we would be doing is that we are going to create a storage account, which will hold our pictures, videos, and audios of the application. So we can go to create a resource in here, and followed by this, I'm going to search for storage account, and there it is, we have storage account. Now in this place, we have the storage account as an option. We select it, and I click on the create button to create my storage account. Now to make sure everything is on the architecture that we have in here, I will try to keep naming conventions of each resource we create as it is. As a part of it, we shall now go create the storage account following the same naming convention. And the first part is your Azure subscription. I'm choosing AzurePaaS sponsorship as I have used an AzurePaaS. You may have a free trial if you are using free trial account in here. And if in case you're using the sandbox environment, you may have sandbox related subscription display. Now we shall create a new resource group. The name of the resource group, I'm naming it in here as managed platform, which is the name according to the architecture we are making use of. And I click on OK. Followed by this, I'm also mentioning the details like the storage account name, the name of my storage account beginning with something called image store to indicate it's a storage, and I'll put my name in the end to make sure this is unique as it's a host name. I will deploy this in East US as my region with the other details as default. To save some money, I will choose locally redundant as an option, which is a replication. And that's it. Rest of the settings I leave it. I make a review to validate this. Once my validation gets succeeded, I'm going to click on the create button to successfully create the following storage account. When the validation happens, it is just verifying all your settings, and I click on create, which will take a moment, not less than a minute. So usually it just takes less than a minute for sure to successfully create a storage account for us. Let us wait till the storage account is getting deployed successfully. So I will be pausing on this, and once the storage account creation is successfully done, I will bring back that into the display for you. And there we go. The storage account got created successfully. Now we can click on go to resource to get into the storage account. Now we are using the storage account for a purpose to store some pictures in it, and that's what we are going to do. As a part of it, in the left side of the storage account, we can get into containers menu. And here we are going to add a container, and you can imagine a container like a virtual folder. And this container that you're trying to create now, we shall go and configure certain settings in a way such that you will have uploaded your pictures into it. Now here, the container needs a valid name, and the name of this container, I'm naming it as images. Any name could be given, but we can keep some standardized practice. Now you click on create button and note that it's a private container, meaning unauthorized access to the data, and it is not allowed. So you cannot load pictures in your website if you are unauthorized. That is fine. Now I get into this container. Now into this container, by clicking on the upload button, I can browse and upload the pictures available in my GitHub folders which we have cloned earlier. So I click on the browse button, and this will allow me to make access to my components that are available in the local environment of my computer. And here we go. When I clicked on browse, I got the following window in which now I'm going to search for the AZ204 folder which I cloned. You may have additional name in here. In that we have a folder called all files, and this one has labs and demos. So I get into the labs. We are doing the first lab. So when I go to lab number 1, for every lab you have the same structure where there will be a starter and a solution. Solution is a completed project, and starter is the one which you are going to create from scratch. We will go to starter. Now we are dealing with some pictures, so you go to images folder, and there are these set of pictures that you can display in your website. Now let us take a few pictures, probably the burger and the grilled cheese. I'm selecting these. I click on the open button. On doing so, you have successfully selected your pictures. Once after these are selected in the following way, you can click on upload, and this will successfully upload those list of pictures that you have specified in here. Now that's the first part. We got the storage with the content ready. Now let us go set the next part, that is you will be building an application. To be precise in this, please note that to connect the storage account with your application, you have the access keys in the left side menu. We will require these connection strings and access keys, which you can show by clicking here. So we will later on use this. For now, you can make a note or you can just keep it. So later when we need it, we can access from here. But that's the first thing, which is the storage to store the pictures is ready. Now let us repeat the next part. Now I go to create a resource to create an API application server that will host my API. And that is where under the create a resource menu, I choose create under the web app menu, which we have in here. Now, once you choose create, your web app menu will be displayed with same subscription and the same resource group called managed platform I'm selecting. Now the name for the web app, we will give the name starting with image API, and we will suffix it with your name so it becomes unique. In case it shows a red mark, you can include a number in the end so that it becomes unique, because the name could be taken by somebody else. Now I'm going to deploy my code into it. You can even deploy Dockers and container applications. Even a static web application can be hosted here if necessary. We shall go with the code, and the code we have is based on .NET 8, so we can choose .NET 8, and that's the reason why we installed .NET 8 as a prerequisite in this following environment. You can host a Windows or Linux application. Let us say we are using a Windows one in here, and meanwhile there is your pricing plan, and this is the billing unit I told. You can click on create new to give a valid name for it. In our case, we are naming the plan with a name, a wonderful name called managed plan, by clicking on OK. Now, anytime you can click on explore pricing plans to find out. There are plenty of pricing plans based out of the different hardwares as well as the features you get. So let them load. Once they come into the picture, you can see you have different pricing tiers like F1, D1, basic, premium, free, shared, and etc. Each pricing tier comes with compute units and virtual CPU cores and memory, storage space, a pricing for them, number of instances they can scale, followed by that the settings include slots and etc. Like for example, I go to feature view, you get the features of them. In that it displays like what is the auto scale that is supported, can it be elastically scalable, or does it support the concept like redundancy or staging slots. If it is supporting staging slots, then how many staging slots they support, such options you get. In the current example, let us keep it as default, the standard S1. Meanwhile, the zone redundancy is not applicable for this pricing tier. If you go with the premium tier, you get it. And this is an option when enabled, when Microsoft is doing the scaling for your service, if insisted by you, it will deploy your servers into different zones of Azure data center. Now let us skip that. Apart from that, if you click on next, you get the database option. So if you want to create a database along with the app server, you can choose this option. For a testing and dev scenario, it could be better. You can also do deployment in here. In this, if you enable the deployment, you can directly integrate a GitHub environment by authorizing. So CI/CD to this app server will directly take place. And similarly, in the networking, you can define the public access, whether it is allowed for your web server or not. You can also select network injection to allow or deny the communication to your network that you prefer. Now going forward, without changing any, in the monitoring menu, which is an option called Application Insights that could help you to monitor your web application, comes in here. This feature we don't need for now, so I will turn this option as no. Later in the upcoming topics, we can leverage this benefit. For now, with these, by clicking on next, in the tags menu, a tag is basically a key and a value pair for grouping the resources you create in Azure. We are going to skip this. It's not needed for us being a developer. So whatever I'm not talking much about now could be for a reason that it's not needed for a developer, and certain features which we may discuss later on in a while. Now with this, you make a review, and this makes a validation of your web app. Once validated, you can click on the create button, and this will be successfully creating an Azure App Service for you. Let the deployment get started, which will take around a minute or two to get the deployment successfully done for us. Once the deployment is completed, we'll continue back on the line. And here we go. We have successfully deployed our web app, and when I click on go to resource, I can show you the following is my web app, which can be seen by us. Now anytime I can click on browse in here to browse this web application, and when we do a browse in the following environment, you will find out a sample web application like this. And now we are going to target over this, where we will be replacing the sample web application to talk to our own API that we are going to be deploying in here. Now before that, we have a piece of code that we will make use of. So what we are going to do now is a wonderful thing. So let us say I'll open one more tab of the same Azure portal in here, and that's for a purpose where I may require the credentials of the storage account that we previously created. Now what we do here, in the left side menu of this web app, I go to a menu which is available in the left, and that's called as environmental variables. So you may get this option as app configuration as well, depending on each customer subscription. Depending on whether you're a beta user, you may get this option varying. So I got it as environmental variable. You may get it as app configuration. In that, I went into app settings. So usually this is where you can add your app settings that you prefer. And here I'm going to add an application setting that would be acting as an environmental variable. So we give it a valid name called storage connection string. You will have to provide this exact name, and all these will be in your instruction document. In the place of value, I will get back to Azure portal in another tab, and if I remember, we created a storage account in the current demo. And if you recall, I asked you to make a note of the connection string of the storage account. So for this storage account, in the left side, I get into access keys. And in the access keys menu of the storage account, we have the connection string. So I click on show button, and I'm copying the connection string. So make use of the connection string because you're going to make a connection using the whole connection string. Copy it, provide it here, or if you have noted it somewhere, paste it right in here. Once you do that, you click on the following apply button, and that is equivalent to you saving the configuration as an environmental variable, and I'm confirming it. It says that your app server will be restarted, and I'm fine with that. So this way you can create an environmental variable. And that means from now on, if a developer is using the storage connection string as an environmental variable in his application that connects to a database, it will always point down to the following connection string that I have in here whenever his application is deployed into the following image API web application service that we have. So we have done with the setup, especially in the platform of the Azure. Now it is time to do a deployment of your API application to Azure. And here is my VS Code. In case if you do not have the Visual Studio Code installed in your computer, you can download and install the one. And if you're using a sandbox, and by default, it comes as a part of it. Now, what I'm doing in the Visual Studio Code is I'm going to open my project folder. Let us say I'll click on open folder. Now I'm trying to open a folder in my VS Code, and that is going to be a folder which is preferably going to be consisting of the lab files which we have. And now in the following file explorer, I'm just getting into the menu on the left side, and this is where I go for the documents in which we have the AZ204 folder. Now inside this, under all files, under labs, we have lab number 1, we go to starter, and API is the project we need to deal with, and I'm selecting this folder to open it for the current moment of time. And this one will successfully get my API folder opened. Now following, it has the content that I needed. So it is asking whether I trust it. I say I trust the following path, and that's because of security concern. Now this is a piece of API that is already available for us. We are just going to make use of it. So any pre-configurations and etc. that happens, you can just allow it to make it happen. Now while it is going on, we have the following API folder available with plenty of content in it. In this one, in the left side, if I go, there is a file called api.zip, which is already packed for us, and we are going to deploy this one as an application to cloud. Before we do that, take a look over this. In the program.cs, you have configured, or this code is pre-configured with some startup classes and everything that is needed for it to work. Similarly, you do have the app options.cs, which has storage connection string, full image container name, and the thumbnail image name as a couple of or triple properties available. The main part is the app settings.json. Storage connection string, if you recall this is the same variable that is available as a part of your design. So the storage connection string is the same variable which we created in the Azure environment for the lab that we are dealing with. So that's the same name we use. Apart from that, a container name and the image thumbnail name are a couple of properties. Now there is a controller which is called imagecontroller.cs. This one is given with all the instructions that would do the tasks by communicating with your storage. So there is a task called get cloud blob container, where your container name, the storage account container name, is passed on to it, where it will create a container if it is not there, and if the container is created, it will respond back. And similarly, there is a get task, and this is useful for getting all the available blobs in a container, which is like all the available pictures in your container you will be getting with this. So this way, there is a post task using which your API can help you in uploading your images into the blob storage. And for that, you're using this following activity, which is upload asynchronously as a task for blobs. Now regarding this topic, we will discuss in depth with the upcoming blob, which is a module, which is called storage account blobs. In that, we will learn in detail about how you can do a programming to upload and download such pictures. As I told in this module, I'm not teaching you to turn or write any code for building an API. Rather, we are learning about how you can deploy an API to a web app. Now with this part, which is ready in the place, I'm going to use a feature which is called terminal in the Visual Studio Code, and I'll open a new terminal. What you're trying to do now is from this terminal, you're trying to communicate with your Azure platform. So AZ login is a command I'm running. When you do this, you will be forced to log into the Azure platform. So the way it works is that you will be redirected into your browser, where in your browser, when you run this command, you will be asked to talk to your Azure platform and implement an authentication call. So I just ran the command, and in the background, it took me to an Azure portal. And if you see now, this is my Azure portal, wherein which we are being asked to log in. So I'm just selecting my account details, and I click on sign in. And this will be successfully doing my sign in into the Azure platform, and we did the same. And now what happens is your VS Code will be doing the job, where in Visual Studio Code, your sign in will be successfully signified in a moment. Wait for it. And as soon as it is done, the list of all the available subscriptions in your account will be displayed in here. Now, in case you have multiple subscriptions in an account, or if your account belongs to multiple tenants, it would take some time. That's what happening to me. Usually it could take like 30 seconds to 1 minute for me. Let me wait, and once it is done, we shall see the response. And there we go. We have successfully did the job where the deployment has happened, and we have got the sign-in successful. And that means I can from now on list the available subscriptions, resource groups, and everything from my Azure platform. To move forward in this, let us now go list out the available web apps. So to make things easier, I'm pasting the command. You can also find it in the reference document. AZ web app list is a command to list all your web apps. And we are mentioning the resource group, which is a parameter, and the name of the resource group as managed platform. This one is about to list out all your available resource groups. So here I'm getting an exception saying that managed platform as a resource group could not be found. And that could be for a reason where I have multiple Azure subscriptions, so it could have selected a different subscription. As you see now, I have various other subscriptions available as a part of this account, and that could also be one of the reasons. So I can select my subscription by using a command which is like az account set. So this command, if you see, can help me to put on my subscription details. So I would go for like az account set hyphen subscription, followed by that my subscription ID. So when you do this, you may not get this issue because you may have only one subscription. But in my case, I have multiple subscriptions, and that's the reason. So I provide my subscription ID, and now the subscription got selected. And let us now again retry what we did earlier, which is the following option of AZ web app list with the resource group name. And now this will help me to find out the following web app, and here we go. We have a web app with the details of this resource group, including the properties, and the web app, which is image API kishore.azurewebsites.net. So in case if there is a scenario where there are multiple web apps in the single resource group, you can use a command which is AZ web app list with the resource group name and a query saying that starts with a name called image API. This means I'm giving the starting name of my web app, and still the output remains same. The reason is simple. There is only one web app in the current situation, so your output will still remain same. But if there are multiple web apps, you will be filtering one specific web app and display using this command. Now we can also do the next part, that is like you can try doing an activity of listing out a name of the web app. Say for example, same command with a query that goes in like starting name with image API dot name colon name, which means in the out of the entire JSON output you got, you're filtering the name property alone and displaying it in a table separated value. And there you go, you will be getting the name of your web app that is available in your subscription, which is image API Kishore. Now let us host the application we have. And in this example, I'm in the API folder, which is the following folder, and in there itself we have this api.zip file. So depending on your laptop or sandbox environment, you may have to navigate into this folder where the api.zip file is available. Since I'm in the same place, I'm not navigating anywhere, and I'm running a command, and here is the command AZ web app deployment, which is to host a website where the source is a zip file. So we are saying source configuration as zip, with the resource group name as managed platform, and the file is api.zip file, which we have on the left side. So that's a bundle that was created for deploying this API. It was already done with the following lab. And the name of the website into which you want to deploy, here you should delete the name along with the greater than or less than brackets. So hyphen name space, the name of the web app is image API Kishore. I copy this name and I paste the following name in the following area, and I hit on enter. When you do this, you are actually pushing your locally available web application into the Azure platform. Wait for this, and in some time, you will be having your Azure web app successfully hosted, which is an API. And you can also browse this application in the website, and you will find out a wonderfully working piece of your application in the internet. Now it is going on. Depending on the size of the code, it could take too long or too less, but it will be completed in a moment's time. Let us wait for the logs to appear. And there it is. It insists that you can find your API deployment from here, and this is the details of the deployment. Now we can go and confirm if really the deployment has happened for us or not. And for doing the same, I switch over to the Azure platform where we have this image API. And in the image API, I'm clicking on the browse button, and there it is. You can find out this image API will be deployed and displayed for us. And there is a proof. The two pictures which we uploaded into storage account, their credentials are being called on and you can see them. Now, how did this work? If you recall, there was a code pre-written in the API, and the code was also using an app settings.json file that is making use of a variable called storage connection string, an environmental variable. So there you gave your storage account connection string. So it is listing out all the available pictures in the images container of the storage account. And of course, if you browse this URL, you cannot see the pictures. You can see the pictures because this URL is actually generated with the shared access signature, which is an authorization token. And that means whichever the picture that is loading now, I can preferably see the same picture in my website, which is the next step that we are going to do. So that's taking a moment to load, and that's a part of the nature, but it works fine depending on pricing tier of the storage. Now this was the picture we uploaded, and we are trying to get the same data but in a different format. Let us say in a website, we will be getting it in a while. Now that's the first part. You deployed an API and you did connect your API to the service, which is your Azure App Service. So if you recall, in the following architecture, this API is deployed, which is reading the pictures from the storage account, which is in a container. So this part is over. Now the front end web tier reading the pictures via the API should be created, and that means in the Azure portal you are going to create the front end web application now. Now let us do the next part. I go to create a resource to create the front end web tier of my application. Now here I'm choosing the web app creation option again, and this time it is the front end tier, which will be named as image web Kishore, and let us go for it. Same subscription and resource group, name as image web Kishore I provided, and publish method as code, and here same .NET 8 as my runtime environment, with the Windows as the platform, with region as East US, and the same managed platform app service plan I'm selecting. Without any other properties except in the monitoring, where application insights are being turned on, we can turn it off and we shall create the web app. So let the following load. And now here I'll say application insights as no. I'll make a review to validate this. And after the validation becomes successful, I'm clicking on the create button. Now let the deployment get successfully done. And as soon as the deployment is successfully done, I'll continue back sharing my screen to discuss what would be done next to it to complete our solution. And there we go. The deployment of the following resource has successfully happened. And if I click on go to resource, similar to your API web app, there is your image web app in which you can show the front end. And this one does have a host name, which is imageweb.kishore.azurewebsites.net. You can anytime browse to see the same, and that's going to remain like that. Now the API displayed your API. Similarly, the image website we're going to host and see. And the thing is, we have a front-end web tier code that is written with the logic to communicate with your API. So the environmental variable we shall add first. So the environmental variable name is called API URL. So in the following image web, in the left side, we shall go to environmental variable. Now here we are going to give the name for that, which is API URL, and the value is going to be my image API value which I have. If you recall, this is the API that gives you the URL of every image in the storage. You take this one and provide this in here and apply it. And that means you should understand whichever the web tier code you're going to host, that web tier application code, it is actually having the environmental variable called API URL and the following value, which is the connection string for the API server. And this means if I show you the code now, you will get an idea on how the following is working together. Now let us go check out the next part, That is, we are again making use of the VS Code. So if you remember earlier in the VS Code, we have opened the following option that was to explore the lab API folder. Similarly, let us say file open folder, and I'm going to now look forward to open the next folder, which is called web dot, that is the web folder which has the website. I'm selecting this one. Now in this web folder, you see there is an app settings.json file which has API URL equal to empty. And that's what you actually did in prior in the Azure portal now by providing the option which is API URL equal to your API value. So this means when the developer is writing the code, he need not worry, because depending on which platform or which environment the application gets hosted, it will get the value of the API server. Now then there is your program.cs initializing all your required services. Then there is options.cs that is having to get this API URL. Then you have your pages that gives the front end index page with the components written to display a UI that will show the pictures from the blob storage. In the index.cs html.cs, you have the logics. There is an onGet asynchronously task which will be making use of an option to get the URL from the API, which is the value of the connection. In other words, the URL of every picture in the API. So it will take it, it will deserialize it and help you to list the available images. That is the onGet asynchronously task which will run. Similarly, there is an onPost asynchronously task in case if you want to upload a picture into your storage account using the open read stream option in here. The instructions are provided where you can upload a picture from the front end of your application directly to the blob storage via the API. And at the end of the day, these entire logics are connecting to your storage account via API, and that's the design. So this code is being again made as a zip file. And as I told you, we will discuss about writing the code to read and write the data to blob storage will be discussed separately in the third module. For now, we can host this web.zip file to cloud. Same like earlier, I'll go to terminal and open a new terminal. In case you're not in this folder of the web, you can navigate to the web folder in your computer. This AZ login command is not needed to be ran again because we have did the login already. In case if your login session is expired, you may have to re-log in. So I can skip the AZ login command. Followed by this one, I can list out AZ web app list command with the resource group name. This is going to list out every single web app available in that resource group. Now there are two web apps, and that's why you see two different outcomes of the same query you got. Now this is a scenario where with the starting name or ending name of a web app, you can say list the web app in the resource group whose starting name is image web. So this will display only the properties of the image web server rather than showing the API server as well. So this is the reason why we made use of that option in the current example. See now, you got the output, but for only one web app, not two web apps. Now followed by this, we can also list out the name of it like earlier. So in the following query, you're including .name equal to name as an output of a table separated value. So the web server name you will be getting in the output. Finally, you have it here. And that's it. Image web Kishore is ready. Now what do we do next? We are going to do the deployment. So we will do AZ web app deployment by mentioning the zip file as the configuration with your resource group name, source file as web.zip, and the name of this web app by deleting in the end, including the brackets. I copy this image web Kishore and I paste this here and I hit on enter. So you are successfully hosting your web tier application into the Azure platform. Now you wait for this to be done. In a moment, you will be having your website live and you can start browsing your pictures from the website. You will be able to view your components in the website in a clear-cut fashion. So let us wait for it. It is about to come and there we go. Now when I go to the Azure portal, here in the following environment, in the Azure portal, I get into the overview page, which is my image web API. And anytime you can browse here, or already we have browsed it, that's the API. So let's browse the image web as well. When I browse it, my web tier is going to come online to display a website. And if you remember, there were a couple of pictures. There was a picture of this burger and there was a grilled cheese. They both are loading. On the other hand, I can also try to upload my own pictures and see if that comes, it will work fine. So let's say I'm clicking on browse. So when I do browse, I'm actually trying to get my service, and that's going to be my file explorer. So the file explorer is getting loaded. Let me just bring it into the display for you. And here, what I would be trying to do is that I'll be trying to get my files uploaded into the place. And that's like, I can bring on my pictures into this, and that means I'll be able to make use of this facility to upload the data. So let's again click on the browse button. So when I click on browse, I have got the browser to browse the files open. Let's display that in here. And now this one, whichever we have made available, this thing is going to help me to get the picture or whatever the content I have. So there it is. So let's say I'm uploading the veggie. This following picture I'm selecting, I click on open. So when I do this, the following picture is selected. All I need to do is click on the upload button now, and this will try to upload the picture for me. And there we go. There is my third picture that is getting uploaded. It's already done, and it's trying to display the third picture in my application. So successfully, we have got the following option displayed in place. And same way, you can have an option of seeing the data. Like if I go to my Azure portal, here if I go to the storage account that we created, in the containers menu of this storage account, you have your pictures uploaded. So I go to containers, images, and there it is. There is a new value, whichever the unique name it got. This one is the new blob, and that's a picture which you have uploaded right now in this with the following programmatic call. So that's a completion of this demo. At an end of it, you can complete the lab by deleting your lab resources. So how do you do that? All the resources you created, they are all in one single resource group. So to do the access of it, in the menu, if you go to resource groups in here, you can find out there is your managed platform, which is a resource group. Get into this and you can find out your resource, and all you need to do is you have to delete the whole resource group, so everything will be deleted. So this is how you save money by unwanted spends. Click on the delete resource group, and this one is going to ask you the name. So copy the name of the resource group, provide it in here, click on delete, and once you delete, it's gone forever. In few moments from now, the deletion will be successful. Once the deletion is initiated, you don't need to wait. That's it. Even if you close the window, your deletion will take place automatically. And that completes the following lab, which was related to the following architecture. And that's like how you can deploy a web and an API all together integrated with an Azure App Service.